That night, I took my daughter to the airport for what I thought was just another work trip. Everything seemed normal until my grandson, only 7 years old, grabbed my hand hard. His eyes, filled with panic, made me freeze. With a trembling voice, he whispered, "Grandma, let's not go back to the house. This morning I heard Mom planning something against us. Please believe me." In that instant, something inside me broke. Without asking questions, I started the car and fled with him into the darkness of the night. But before we continue, make sure you are subscribed to the channel and write in the comments where you are watching this video from. We love knowing how far our stories are reaching. My name is Elena. I am 70 years old, and until that night, I thought I knew my daughter Claudia like the back of my hand. I live with her and my grandson Adrien ever since my son-in-law's death 3 years ago. A car accident that left deep scars on all of us, especially little Adrien, who has since become an extremely observant and silent boy. That Thursday, we took Claudia to the Chicago O'Hare International Airport for a business trip to Dallas. She's a marketing manager at a large company and travels frequently. We arrived early. The terminal was quiet, almost peaceful, except for the low hum of distant conversations and suitcase wheels echoing on the polished floor. Claudia hugged Adrien quickly, kissed my cheek, and smiled as she walked away. She looked confident, beautiful, and cold. I didn't realize that would be the last time I'd ever see her as the daughter I once knew. When we got back to the car, Adrien's small hands were still shaking. I didn't know it yet, but what he told me that night would change everything. As I drove away from the airport, the city lights flickered through the windshield like ghostly reminders of a life I thought I understood. Adrien sat quietly in the back seat, clutching his little backpack to his chest. His breathing was shallow, uneven. My heart pounded as I tried to make sense of his words. "What did you mean, sweetheart?" I finally asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked up at me, his big brown eyes glistening with fear. "Grandma," he whispered. "Mom said she was going to make sure we were both gone before she came back." My grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Gone?" I repeated. "What do you mean, gone?" Adrien hesitated, then said something that made my blood run cold. "She was on the phone this morning. She said, 'By the time I get home, there won't be anyone left to worry about.'" She didn't know I was listening. A chill ran through my entire body. My own daughter, my Claudia, the same little girl whose scraped knees I once bandaged, whose fears I once soothed after thunderstorms. Was she truly capable of something like this? No, it couldn't be. It had to be a misunderstanding. Yet the fear in Adrien's voice was too real to ignore. I didn't drive home. Instead, I kept going until we reached a small gas station off the highway. The fluorescent lights buzzed weakly overhead as I parked. "Stay here, sweetheart," I told Adrien, forcing a smile. I went inside, grabbed 2 hot chocolates, and tried to think. My hands were trembling so hard that I spilled some of the drink on the counter. When I got back, Adrien was staring out the window. "Grandma," he said softly, "Mom's not like before anymore. She talks to herself at night. She hides things in her room." My heart ached hearing his tiny voice describe things no child should ever notice. I reached over and held his hand. "We'll be okay, baby," I whispered. "I promise you, we'll be okay." We checked into a small roadside motel a few miles away. The paint was peeling from the walls, and the neon vacancy sign outside flickered like a heartbeat. Inside, the room smelled of old carpet and disinfectant. Adrien curled up on the bed with his doll, his eyes still wide open. I sat by the window staring out into the dark, my mind spinning. What if he was right? What if my daughter had truly changed? I remembered the months after her husband's death, how she'd become distant, angry, how her temper had started to scare even me. She'd begun drinking heavily, staying out late, and talking about how everything would be easier if people just stopped getting in her way. At the time, I'd brushed it off as grief, but now, those words took on a new, terrifying meaning. I barely slept that night. Every sound outside made me flinch. Every car that passed by made my stomach twist. By morning, Adrien was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at me. "Grandma," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "What if Mom's already looking for us?" I forced a calm smile and brushed his hair gently. "Don't worry, my love," I said softly. "She doesn't know where we are." But deep down, I wasn't so sure. Because Claudia always knew how to find what she wanted. And if what Adrien said was true, she wasn't just coming home. She was hunting. The next morning, the weak winter sun filtered through the thin motel curtains, painting faint lines of light across the faded carpet. I hadn't slept more than a few minutes. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Claudia's face, smiling as she waved goodbye at the airport. But behind that smile now lived something dark, something I could no longer recognize. Adrien sat quietly at the small wooden table, his little hands wrapped around a styrofoam cup of warm milk. His eyes looked tired, much older than 7 years should allow. "Grandma," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think she knows we left?" I hesitated before answering. "Not yet," I said. "We'll keep moving for a bit, just until we figure out what's going on." I forced a small smile, but inside I was terrified. The woman who used to be my daughter. What if she was already on her way back from Dallas? I picked up my phone to check for messages. That's when I saw it. 3 missed calls from Claudia, and 1 text that made my stomach twist. "Where are you taking my son? Don't make me come find you." I locked the screen quickly so Adrien wouldn't see. My heart started racing. The calm woman I saw last night at the airport, she was gone. Something in that message felt menacing, almost calculated. Before panic could take over, I reminded myself, I wasn't powerless. I still had friends in town, people who could help. So, I packed our few belongings, checked out of the motel, and drove straight to my old friend Margaret's house, about 20 minutes away. Margaret and I had taught together for over 30 years, and she was one of the few people I still trusted completely. When she opened the door, her face lit up with surprise. "Elena, my goodness, what are you doing here?" she asked. But when she saw Adrien clinging to my coat, her smile faded. "What happened?" Inside, over a pot of coffee, I told her everything. Adrien's warning, the message from Claudia, and my fears. She listened silently, occasionally glancing at Adrien, who was sitting quietly on the couch petting Margaret's old cat. When I finished, she reached out and squeezed my hand. "Elena, you need to go to the police. This isn't just paranoia. If that message is real, she's threatening you." But I shook my head. "They won't believe me. They'll think it's a family misunderstanding. Claudia has money, influence. She'll twist everything around like she always does." Margaret sighed. Concern etched across her face. "Then stay here, at least for a few days," she said softly. "I'll help however I can." I thanked her, grateful beyond words. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of safety, but it didn't last long. That evening, as Adrien and I sat on the couch watching TV, I heard Margaret call out from the kitchen, "Elena, did you lock your car?" My heart sank. I hadn't. Margaret's voice grew tense. "There's someone outside." I rushed to the window. And there, standing across the street in the dim glow of a streetlight, was a figure. I couldn't make out their face, but I could feel their gaze locked on the house. My phone buzzed again. One new message. This time it was a picture of my car parked right outside Margaret's house. Then another message followed. Just 2 words, "Found you." Before we move on, don't forget to subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching this story from. It helps us keep sharing more stories like this. I turned off the lights, grabbed Adrien's hand and whispered, "Stay quiet." Because one thing was certain, Claudia wasn't in Dallas anymore. The house fell into a tense silence. Only the ticking of Margaret's wall clock filled the room as I stood frozen by the window, staring into the dark street. The figure outside hadn't moved. Adrien clung to my side, trembling, his tiny fingers digging into my arm. "Grandma," he whispered. "Is it her?" I didn't answer, because deep down, I already knew. No one else would have followed us this far. Margaret came closer, her voice low but firm. "Elena, call the police. Now." I pulled out my phone, but before I could dial, headlights flared across the window. A car engine roared, and then silence. When I looked again, the figure was gone. My stomach twisted. It felt like the calm before a storm. I called anyway. The operator's voice was calm, almost detached, as I explained everything. A patrol car arrived 20 minutes later. 2 officers stepped out, young and polite but skeptical. They checked around the property, took a quick statement, and left with the usual line. If she shows up again, ma'am, call us immediately. Margaret locked every window and door before we finally sat down again. I could tell she was trying to stay calm, but her eyes betrayed her worry. She knows where you are, she said quietly. You can't stay here, Elena. Adrien was curled up on the couch, half asleep from exhaustion. I brushed the hair from his forehead and whispered, We'll figure this out, sweetheart. I promise. But inside, I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep that promise. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I heard a noise outside, the faint sound of footsteps on gravel. I peeked through the curtain. No one. Then a soft tap came from the front porch. I froze. Another tap, deliberate and slow. My breath caught in my throat. I grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen and crept toward the front door. Margaret appeared behind me, holding a rolling pin like a weapon. We exchanged a glance. I yanked the door open. Nothing. The porch was empty except for a small envelope lying on the doormat. It was addressed to me. My shaking hands tore it open. Inside was a photo of me and Adrien from earlier that day, sitting on the motel bed. The photo had been taken from outside the window. Scrawled across the back, in Claudia's handwriting, were the words, You should have stayed home, mother. Margaret gasped when she saw it. Elena, this isn't normal. She's dangerous. Tears welled in my eyes, but I forced myself to stay strong. She's my daughter, I said, my voice breaking. I can't believe she'd do this. Not to me. Not to him. Margaret took my shoulders firmly. You can't keep thinking like that. Whatever's left of your daughter. It's not the same person anymore. You have to protect that boy. Her words cut through the fog of fear clouding my mind. She was right. This wasn't the time for denial or hope. It was survival now. Before the night ended, I packed our things again. Margaret begged me to stay until morning, but I couldn't risk it. The photo meant Claudia had been close. Too close. As Adrien slept in the car, I drove away into the night, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I didn't know where we were going, only that we couldn't stop. Because wherever Claudia was, she wasn't done with us yet. The highway stretched endlessly before us, the headlights cutting narrow tunnels through the cold night. Adrien was asleep in the back seat, clutching his worn-out toy bear. I kept glancing at him through the rearview mirror, my heart aching for the innocence he'd already lost. Every few miles I checked to see if anyone was following us, a habit that had already turned into instinct. The fear from that photo still lingered in my chest. My daughter, my own flesh and blood, had been watching us. I kept replaying her handwriting in my mind. You should have stayed home, mother. It wasn't a threat made in anger. It was deliberate. Cold. Planned. Just before sunrise, I stopped at a small diner off the interstate. The place was nearly empty except for a few truckers having breakfast. I ordered pancakes for Adrien and a black coffee for myself. My hands trembled so badly that I spilled sugar all over the table. When Adrien woke up, he rubbed his eyes and smiled weakly. Grandma, is it over? He asked. My throat tightened. Almost, sweetheart, I lied. Almost. Halfway through breakfast, a news broadcast caught my attention on the TV mounted in the corner. The anchor was reporting a car accident on Route 57. A black SUV had crashed into a guardrail the night before. The driver had fled the scene before the police arrived. My stomach turned cold. Claudia drove a black SUV. I stared at the screen, barely breathing. Could it have been her? Was she chasing us even last night? Before I could think further, my phone buzzed again. Another message. This time it wasn't words, just a video. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the screen before pressing play. The video showed the front of Margaret's house, police cars parked outside, flashing lights illuminating the dark street. And then, Claudia's voice, soft and mocking, came through the speakers. You should have stayed with her, Mom. Now it's only a matter of time. The phone slipped from my hand and clattered onto the table. My chest tightened. Grandma? Adrien asked, confused and scared. I quickly picked up the phone, ended the video, and forced a trembling smile. It's nothing, sweetheart, just wrong number. But inside, my heart was racing. Margaret, my dear friend, she might be in danger because of me. I pulled out my wallet and tossed some bills on the table. We have to go, I said quickly. Adrien didn't argue. He just nodded, sensing my urgency. We got back on the road, this time heading toward a rural town I hadn't visited in years, the place where I grew up, a quiet village called Haven Creek. My parents' old farmhouse still stood there, though it had been abandoned for years. It was remote, isolated, and maybe, just maybe, safe. By the time we arrived, the morning sun was rising over the frost-covered fields. The house looked tired, its paint peeling and windows clouded with dust, but seeing it brought me a strange sense of comfort. This was where I'd raised my children. This was where I'd first held Claudia in my arms. As I opened the creaky door, Adrien grabbed my hand. "It smells funny," he said softly. I smiled faintly. "It's just old memories, my love." We settled in quietly, lighting the fireplace and warming a pot of soup on the stove. For the first time in days, there was silence. Real silence. But as I walked past the front door later that afternoon, something caught my eye. A faint line of fresh tire tracks led up to the gate, and my heart dropped when I noticed they matched the tread of Claudia's SUV. The farmhouse had always felt like a sanctuary to me, a place untouched by the chaos of the world, but that morning it no longer felt safe. The tire tracks outside confirmed my worst fear. Claudia had found us. For the next few hours, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe a delivery truck or an old neighbor passing through. But deep down I knew the truth. My daughter was out there somewhere close and she was watching. I didn't tell Adrien. Instead, I made breakfast and tried to act normal. Pancakes again, his favorite. He sat at the table, swinging his legs, drawing in his little notebook. "Grandma," he said suddenly, "do you think Mommy is still mad at you?" I froze for a moment, my heart sinking. "No, sweetheart," I managed to say softly. "She's just not herself right now." After breakfast, I went out to the barn to check the old generator. It was the only thing keeping the house warm, and I couldn't risk it dying in the middle of the night. As I stepped inside, the smell of hay and rust hit me, familiar yet haunting. Sunlight cut through the cracks in the wooden walls, casting long, thin beams across the floor. Then I noticed something odd, a small pile of cigarette butts near the back door. Claudia used to smoke that exact brand when she was younger. My hands began to shake. She had been here. Recently. I grabbed Adrien and told him we were going to stay inside for the rest of the day. I locked every door, shut every curtain, and kept the lights dim. My mind kept racing. How far would Claudia go? What had pushed her to this point? As the evening fell, the silence became unbearable. Every creak of the old wood made me jump. I thought about calling the police again, but what could I say? That my daughter was stalking me? They'd think it was some family dispute gone too far. Around midnight, I heard it. A faint knock at the back door. Not loud, not frantic. Slow, deliberate, like someone testing to see if I was awake. I crept to the kitchen, my heart pounding, and peeked through the curtain. There was no one there, just the empty porch swaying in the wind. I waited a few seconds longer, then saw it. A shadow moving near the tree line. Adrien came out of his room, clutching his bear. "Grandma, who's outside?" he whispered. I forced a calm tone I didn't feel. "No one, baby. Go back to bed." But I could see the fear in his eyes. He knew I was lying. The knocking came again, this time louder. I reached for the old shotgun my late husband kept behind the door. I had never fired it, but tonight, I was ready to learn. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. Silence. Then from outside came a voice I hadn't heard in weeks. Cold, calm, and familiar. "Mom." "Let me in." It was Claudia. I stood frozen, gripping the gun tighter. "Claudia, please don't do this," I said, my voice cracking. She laughed, a sound that made my blood run cold. "Oh, Mom, you should have listened to me." "You never do." Adrien peeked from behind me, whispering, "Grandma, it's Mommy." Tears filled my eyes. "Go to your room, sweetheart," I said softly, as he ran off. I felt something deep inside me shift. The mix of fear, anger, and heartbreak all colliding at once. Outside, Claudia's voice grew closer, whispering through the cracks in the door. "You took everything from me. Now I'm taking him back." And then, the sound of footsteps circling the house. I blew out the lantern, my heart pounding in the dark. For the first time in my life, I realized my daughter wasn't coming to talk. She was coming to finish what she started. The rest of the night was a blur of terror and silence. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every sound outside made my pulse race. The wind scraping the windows, the creak of the floorboards, even the faint hum of the refrigerator. It all sounded like footsteps. By dawn, I was sitting in the living room with the shotgun resting across my lap, staring at the door. The pale light of morning spilled through the curtains, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to believe she was gone. Maybe she had come to scare us and then left, but deep down I knew better. Adrien patted softly into the room, rubbing his eyes. "Grandma, is Mommy gone?" he asked. I forced a smile, though my voice trembled. "Yes, baby, she's gone." But as I looked at him, the same hazel eyes as Claudia's, the same little dimple when he smiled, I realized I couldn't keep running forever. I had to know what my daughter wanted, what had driven her to become this stranger lurking in the shadows. So, after breakfast, I decided to leave the farmhouse for a few hours. I told Adrien we were going for a drive, but really, I planned to find out if Claudia had returned to the city. I needed answers, even if it meant walking straight into danger. We drove into town, to Claudia's house. I parked a block away and watched from the car. The curtains were drawn. The driveway was empty, but the mailbox was stuffed full. She hadn't been home for days. My stomach twisted. If she wasn't here, where was she hiding? Suddenly, Adrien gasped. "Grandma, look!" He pointed toward the porch. There, taped to the front door, was a piece of paper fluttering in the wind. I stepped out of the car and approached slowly. My heart hammered as I pulled it free. It was a letter, addressed to me. The handwriting was shaky, uneven, but unmistakably Claudia's. "Mom, you think you're saving him, but you're only making it worse. He's not safe with you. I know things you don't. Things you wouldn't believe. Please stop running. You'll regret it if you don't. Claudia." My hands trembled as I read the words over and over. He's not safe with you. What did she mean by that? Was this all some twisted illusion in her mind? Or had something happened that I didn't know about? That's when I noticed something else. At the bottom of the note, in different handwriting, a smaller line was scribbled in red ink. "She's watching you." A chill ran through me so hard my knees almost gave out. I turned to the street, empty. No cars, no people. But I felt it. That prickling sense of being observed. I hurried Adrien back into the car and started driving, my eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every few seconds. And then, in one of those glances, I saw it, a black SUV following us at a distance. No headlights, no plates I could read. Adrien whispered, "Grandma, that car's been behind us since we left the farm." I gripped the wheel tighter. "It's okay, sweetheart," I said, though my voice betrayed me. "We're going somewhere safe." But I didn't even know what safe meant anymore. The SUV followed us for nearly 10 miles, keeping just far enough to make its presence known, like a predator stalking prey. When I finally turned onto a side road leading to the old church on the hill, it slowed, then stopped, watching. I parked behind the church, breathing heavily. Adrien clung to me, his little body shaking. I pulled him close and whispered, "I promise. I won't let anyone hurt you," but as I said it, I knew. The storm was far from over. Claudia wasn't just after me anymore. She wanted her son back, and she'd do anything to get him. I sat in the pew of the old church, my heart still hammering from the drive. The morning light streamed through the stained glass windows, casting fractured colors across the floor. Red, blue, gold, like pieces of a shattered life. Adrien clung to my side, his tiny fingers digging into my arm. I brushed his hair gently, whispering, "It's all right, sweetheart. Grandma's here." But even as I said it, I didn't believe my own words. The silence of the church was unsettling, the kind that makes you aware of every breath, every heartbeat. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the doors. I could feel that SUV's shadow still behind us, even if I couldn't see it anymore. Then I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, echoing through the church corridor. My body tensed. Adrien's grip tightened. I turned toward the entrance and froze. It wasn't Claudia. It was Father Thomas, the priest who'd married my daughter and her husband 10 years ago. His face softened when he saw us. "Elena," he said gently. "My God, you look like you've seen a ghost." I broke down. Everything poured out. The whispers, the letter, the SUV, Claudia's strange behavior. He listened silently, nodding, his brow furrowed. When I finished, he sighed deeply and said, "Your daughter. She came to me last month. She said she was afraid of losing her mind. She told me she was being followed, watched, and that someone wanted to take Adrien away from her." I blinked in disbelief. "What? That's not true." "She's the one following us." Father Thomas hesitated. "She mentioned someone from her work, said they were threatening her, forcing her to do things she didn't want to. She sounded desperate, Elena." My blood ran cold. Could Claudia have been telling the truth all along? Had I misunderstood everything? Before I could ask more, the church door creaked open, hard. Adrien screamed and clung to me. A figure stepped in from the sunlight. Claudia. Her face was pale, her hair disheveled, her eyes bloodshot and filled with exhaustion. She wasn't the angry, vengeful woman I had imagined. She looked terrified. "Mom," she said, her voice trembling. "Please, don't scream." "I'm not here to hurt you." Father Thomas stepped forward. "Claudia, what is going on?" She shook her head frantically. "They're coming. You don't understand. I was trying to protect him. They're after Adrien. Not you, not me, him." My heart stopped. "Who's after him?" I asked. Claudia looked over her shoulder at the church doors. "The people from my company," she whispered. "They found out about the insurance money from Brian's death. They think Adrien knows where I hid it. They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd make sure he disappeared." Father Thomas gasped, but before any of us could respond, the sound of tires screeching outside shattered the moment. The black SUV had found us. Claudia's eyes went wide. "They're here." I grabbed Adrien's hand and pulled him toward the back of the church. Father Thomas shouted something, but I couldn't hear. The crash of glass echoed through the sanctuary as masked figures broke through the side windows. Claudia screamed, "Run! Mom! Take him and run!" We darted through the back hallway, my old legs burning with every step. Behind us I heard a scuffle, shouting, and then silence. I turned for one brief moment and saw Claudia standing between us and the intruders, wielding a broken candlestick like a weapon. Her eyes met mine, pleading, desperate, and in that instant, I realized something I hadn't wanted to believe. She was never the enemy. She was trying to save us. I forced myself to turn away and ran with Adrien through the side exit, bursting into the cold daylight. We dove into the woods behind the church as gunshots echoed in the distance. My heart pounded as I held Adrien close beneath the trees. "It's going to be okay," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I was saying it for him or for myself. For the first time, I wasn't just running from Claudia. I was running for her. The forest was quiet, except for our footsteps crunching on dry leaves. My lungs burned with every breath, my arms aching from holding Adrien so tightly. The gunshots had stopped, but the silence that followed was somehow worse. Every twig snapping behind us made me flinch. I didn't know where we were running anymore, only that I had to keep him safe. We stumbled onto a dirt road that led to a small farmhouse, its porch light flickering in the distance. Adrien tugged on my sleeve. "Grandma," he whispered, "is Mommy gone?" His voice cracked, fragile. I paused, kneeling down so I could look him in the eyes. "No, sweetheart," I said softly. "She's trying to protect us. We just need to be brave for her right now, okay?" He nodded, tears pooling in his big brown eyes. The farmhouse belonged to an old couple, the Carters, family friends from long ago. I banged on their door until Mr. Carter appeared, his face pale with surprise. "Elena? What on earth? There's no time to explain," I gasped. "We need to use your phone, please." He didn't hesitate. He pulled us inside, locking the door behind him. Mrs. Carter wrapped a blanket around Adrien while I dialed 911 with trembling hands. "They're after us," I said into the receiver. "Armed men at St. Mary's Church. Please, hurry." The dispatcher's calm voice guided me through the call, but my mind wasn't calm. My thoughts were back at the church with Claudia. I couldn't stop seeing her face, that terrified look as she stood between us and those masked men. A few minutes later, we heard sirens in the distance. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. My phone buzzed with a new message. A number I didn't recognize. It read, "You should have stayed out of this, Elena. Now it's too late." My hands went cold. I looked at Mr. Carter, who was already peeking through the window. "There's a black SUV out there," he whispered. "It's coming down the road." Panic gripped me again. No, they can't have followed us this fast. I grabbed Adrien and ducked down, pushing him behind the couch. The headlights swept across the room. We could hear the low rumble of the engine outside, idling. Mrs. Carter clutched her husband's arm. "Elena, they're getting out." Before I could react, the sound of car doors slamming echoed through the night, followed by a loud knock on the door. 3 knocks, slow, heavy. Mr. Carter started toward it, but I stopped him. "Don't," I hissed. Then a voice, muffled but clear, called out from outside. "Mom, it's me, Claudia." Adrien's eyes widened. "It's Mommy!" My mind spun. Could it really be her, or was it a trick? I hesitated for a moment that felt like an eternity, then peeked through the curtains. There she was, bruised, bloodied, her clothes torn, but unmistakably my daughter. She looked straight at the window and mouthed, "They're still out there." My breath caught. "Open the back door," I whispered to Mrs. Carter. Claudia slipped in through the kitchen, collapsing against the counter. Her hands were shaking, her lip bleeding. "They took the money," she rasped. "I gave it to them, but they want Adrien. They think he knows where the rest is." "The rest?" I whispered. She nodded weakly. "Brian left another account, hidden overseas. They think I can find it through Adrien's school login." I told them I didn't know, but they didn't believe me. Before we could say another word, the sound of breaking glass shattered the moment. The front window exploded inward. Masked men stormed the house. Claudia screamed, "Get him out of here!" I grabbed Adrien's hand again, heart pounding in my chest as we ran toward the back door. Behind us, I heard the chaos erupt, shouting, furniture breaking, Claudia yelling something I couldn't make out. As we bolted into the darkness once again, I realized there was no turning back now. The truth about Claudia, Brian, and that money, all of it, was about to come crashing down. And this time, it wouldn't just decide our safety. It would decide who lived to tell the story. We ran through the dense trees behind the farmhouse, the cold night air biting at our faces. Adrien's small hand was firmly in mine, and I could feel his heartbeat racing, matching my own. Every sound, a rustling branch, an owl hooting, felt amplified in the dark. I had no plan, no clear destination, only the desperate need to keep him safe. Finally, we stumbled onto a narrow country road. The headlights from the black SUV had disappeared, but I knew it was only a matter of time before they found us again. I led Adrien toward an old bridge a mile ahead, a place I remembered from my childhood, remote, with no houses nearby. It was risky, but it was the only place to stop and regroup. Once under the bridge, I lowered Adrien to the ground and held him close. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're going to be okay now," I whispered, trying to convince both him and myself. He buried his face in my chest, trembling. Minutes later, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. I froze. The SUV had returned. I scanned the trees, but the shadows hid everything. Then a familiar voice called out, "Claudia." She appeared, breathless and bruised, holding a small duffel bag. "Mom, we don't have much time. They won't stop until they get what they want." I helped Adrien to his feet. Together, we ran to the car Claudia had parked nearby. She threw the bag in the back seat. Inside were documents, money, and a few belongings. "This is everything they were after," she said, urgency in her eyes. As we drove away, the forest behind us swallowed the headlights of the SUV. I glanced at Adrien in the rearview mirror. His eyes were wide, but he clutched my hand tightly, trusting me completely. Claudia sat in the passenger seat, exhausted but alive. For the first time that night, I allowed myself to breathe. We were safe, for now. But I knew one thing. Nothing would ever be the same again. Before we continue to uncover the full story, make sure you are subscribed to the channel and comment where you are watching from. We want to hear from all of you. The nightmare was over, but our fight for survival had only just begun.